Hello, I'm back with another video showcasing this program that I have been developing. So, in terms of obvious changes here, you can see most of the screen here is now taken up by a DPS graph, which should be familiar to a lot of you. So this graph is responding to what is in the builder right now. You can see I have nothing equipped, so it says 0 DPS, and it's along the bottom line right now. But if I populate the gear like this, it instantly creates a line on this graph, gives you a number down here. And if you want to view that number for whatever particular defense from 0 to 150, you can do that by adjusting this number down here. So if you want to see it at 1 defense, at 2 defense, at 3 defense, you can do that. There's a cursor here to make it easier to see. You can turn it on and off by clicking on the number here, the box in the middle. So the big arrow moves it by 25, the small arrow moves it by 1. So you can pretty quickly move from place to place on the graph. And you can store builds using this as well. So you can pin this build, and it'll be stored in one of 6 slots down here. Only 5 of them are pinned. The 6th one is the red one, which is the currently active build. So that's something to keep in mind. You can see down here that I have player buffs and debuffs that you can apply that'll affect the DPS, and you have enemy buffs and debuffs. So I've included exposed as a debuff that you can apply, and that's the reason that this graph starts at 0 instead of -20 like I mentioned. I just thought it made more sense to do it this way. From a design perspective, I changed my mind compared to last video when I said I was gonna include the graph starting at -20. This essentially performs the same function, but it makes more sense on a usability level. So you can by using this, you can check a warrior's DPS with a set of, oh dear. Oh no. Okay, I think I have fixed the bug now. So I should be able to show you what I was actually intending to show you before. Which is the warrior DPS using Berserk as a buff on him. So you can see a set of tops, it responds to this. You can use this in order to build your set under the conditions you'll actually be using it, which I think is helpful. Now, one thing that happens is you're using optimize buttons here, which will swap around your gear. Like, I think, for instance, speed on warrior, it'll spit out a helmet that doesn't give you speedy. So, in the item descriptions, you can see I've added a button here so you can pin an ability. So you can force the build to use that ability. So if you want to have access to speedy, you can pin a helm that gives speedy and then maximize speed, and it'll give you a different set with a different number that is the highest achievable stat with that gear being required as part of the build, which I think is tremendously useful. Probably a lot more useful than the original function of this, which was finding the maximum achievable stats, because in practical use, you're not really trying to do that most of the time. So you can pin this down. In terms of pinning sets here, I just want to mention that the colors I've chosen here are not final. You can see 6 slots. The yellow and the orange here look pretty similar, and the black is hard to see on the graph. I'm going to make those better colors when I start thinking more about the aesthetics of the program rather than the functionality, which is more where I'm at right now. Anyway, back to the functionality up here. You can pin and unpin any piece of gear, not just the ability. You can pin and unpin weapons and armor and rings as well. And also you can ban them from being used in the build. So just imagine, let's say, for the wizard, if you want to, actually I'm not going to click this button yet, but because I haven't talked about it yet. But if you want to maximize speed, and you notice on this build that it uses Vitamin Buster, a limited time availability spell. So maybe you don't have this spell. you can ban it from being used in the build and use a different build that doesn't include that. So you can maximize speed again, and there are no other spell slots that you can use to get speed, so it just gives you an empty slot. But in other cases, it can actually provide a fair amount of utility. I remember in the def set here, if imagining you didn't have the new version of the ancient spell, you could ban this one, and you can see that this build, including it, gives you 52 defense. But if you don't have it and you ban it, and then you maximize again, this set also gives you 52 defense. And I believe it gives more HP, as I recall. I've tested this before. I'll unban this to see what this build does. 710 HP. If you ban it, you get this different build, 725 HP. So you get better survival stats with this build. And one thing that these ban and pin are rather useful for is in terms of abilities. The stats don't tell the whole story, obviously, unlike the armor and the ring slot. So in particular, if you want to do a lot of damage as a wizard, you usually want to have a tablet equipped. Now this doesn't provide dex or attack like the parasite spell. So the parasite spell is always going to be what the DPS calculator says is the best spell, because it gives the attack and it gives the dexterity. But if you want to do damage, then you probably want the avatar spell. So you pin this one and say, what's the best damage? Which is what I'm talking about next. So this button here gives you the best DPS that you can get with the gear. And this one is for a particular level of defense. So if you look at it, at 0 defense, it is best to use this set if you're using the tablet. If you don't pin the tablet, it'll be the parasite spell. It is for every defense. But we want to use the tablet. So we say this, and then you can adjust what defense level, again, you're measuring at, and optimize at that defense level. And you can see at 150 defense, it's better to use the Toga Picta than the Water Dragon Silk Robe. You know, in a lot of cases, you don't want to use this. If you're using tablet, you want to be able to aim it at something that you're aiming your staff at. So let's ban this and just see what the best is now. And you can see it's the tier 13 staff. And then you go up to 150, and you optimize, and it's the Tetsukotl's tail. So it's just interesting in terms of this. Pretty simple in terms of that. And usually it is exactly what you're expecting. It's the DPS gear. You'll get a crown, you'll get a Hirojo 10, you'll get a Mercy's Bane, and you'll get a Water Dragon Silk Robe. Will be in almost every case what you get. One interesting case where that's not the case, if you optimize weapon DPS on Necromancer, I mean, you can see that it is that on this. But if you're actually trying to optimize your DPS, you're going to be using Memento Mori. So if you pin that and then you optimize, you actually get the full ST set, which I thought was interesting. And also if you're damaging. But that doesn't affect the build. I happen to know, but it could, but it doesn't. I wanted to then demonstrate this button, which is very similar to this one, except gives the best set for a range of defense instead of at a particular one. So if you want to find from 0 defense to 60 defense, what the best set is for a wizard. Oops, I clicked twice. It takes a minute to think about it, you can see, compared to the other stuff. 3, 2, 1, click. So this one is basically instant. 3, 2, 1, click. It happens right away. And this one, it has to think about before it can pull it up, because it is running the same calculation this one is, but for every defense level. So that's 61 different times that it's doing this calculation. And that's because it's not a very efficient algorithm currently. In terms of just differences from the previous version that I haven't specifically showed off here, I mean, obviously, just structurally, the whole thing is kind of different because it actually has functionality now. But the descriptions are formatted differently now. This whole item thing, I've reorganized it, but the main thing is I have put in the line breaks like I said I would in the previous video here. So you can see this haiku actually looks like one, that you can see the proper haiku in all four. So this looks better. I think the DPS optimizer is sort of a neat novelty, though not necessarily that useful, just because all it tells you is, yeah, use Mercy's Bane, yeah, use Crown. And then, I mean, the idea of building around what gear you have is useful to me, I think, but not that useful because it doesn't give any surprising results. In terms of the DPS formula, I know Deca just announced sort of a revamp of that with the 90% def cap instead of the 85 that it currently is, and Berserk and Damaging going down to 1.25 instead of 1.5, Curse going up to 1.25 from 1.2. Those are not reflected in the current state of the program, but they will be extremely easy to implement when they hit the live servers. But I haven't done that yet because that's not how the game works currently, but it's on my radar. In terms of what's going to be in the next build of this program, I want to talk about that a little bit. What I had planned originally was going to be doing ability DPS tab, which I think I am still going to do, but I'm a little put off of doing that by the in-combat, out-of-combat thing that Deca is implementing, because that makes it way more complicated. I mean, if the amount you regen magic is dependent on how you play. Because, you know, before you could just put in a magic heal level, or before/currently, you could just put in a magic heal level and, you know, plug in your wisdom, and then you would get how much MP you'd get per second, but it doesn't come consistently anymore. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I definitely need an implementation for abilities in order to make this tool worthwhile, I think. You can see that right now, I mean, I have more data on abilities programmed in, but it's not displayed because I'm not doing anything useful with it right now. So it looks just like the abilities are stat sticks like the armor and the ring, which they're not. So I'm planning to make something to reflect that. I think the biggest challenge for that is going to be dealing with Wizmod, which won't be that hard, but it'll take a bit of time. In terms of other things that I'm immediately planning to do is to display what the ST bonus stats are. Because right now, you know, if you hover over an item in the game, you can see at the bottom which ST bonus stats are active. And there's no way to see that in this builder right now. What I'm thinking is once I've got all these changes that I have planned for the next version working, once that's all together, I might do a little mini release of this program. Because I'm sort of at a point where once I've done that stuff, I'll have done the main things that I want to accomplish with this program. So however long from now it is that I get that stuff done, I will probably let some people use this program if there is a demand for that. I don't know if there is exactly. You know, like I said, there's sort of, you know, just use 10 and crown and whatever. Oh, one more thing that it doesn't do that it will in the next version. Right now, there's no way to account for temporary stat boosts. So, like, if you have Tome of Holy Furor, this DPS is not calculated accurately if you have the dex boost on self up. That's not reflected in the DPS chart, and there's no way to punch it in manually like these status effects. Or if you're using the Bloody Cloak on Rogue, or even if you just use Dex Effusions or whatever. So that's also planned for the next version. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I think there's been a tremendous amount of progress from the previous version, at least. So stay tuned. Next time, it'll be even better. Thanks, bye.